Hello everyone, today my partner Linda Mendez and I, Yohanna Olivares, we are going to present to you the audio-lingual method, and for that purpose we are going first to talk about the history of this method, then the definition and characteristics, as well as the techniques, the advantages and disadvantages of this method, and finally a short conclusion. Well, the audio-lingual method is a teaching method that was developed in the United States in 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s during World War II. At that time, there was an urgent need for people to learn foreign languages for military purposes. That is why this method was also referred to as the Army method. So, the audio-lingual method appeared as a reaction to the grammar translation method, which didn't prepare people to use the target language for communicative purposes, as it focused on writing skills at the expense of the speaking skills. So, likewise, based on Skinner's behaviorism theory, it assumes that a human being can be trained using a system of reinforcement. So, correct behavior receives positive feedback, while errors receive negative feedback. So, the audiolingual method, like the direct method, is also an oral approach. But, however, it's different in that rather than emphasizing vocabulary acquisition through exposure to its use in different situations, the audiolingual method drills students in the use of grammatical sentence patterns. So it was thought that the way to acquire those sentence patterns was through conditioning, helping learners to respond correctly to a stimuli through shaping and reinforcement. So, on the other hand, these authors, Richard and Rogers, 1986, proposed that the teaching of oral skills with accurate pronunciation, grammar, and the ability to respond quickly and accurately is the main objective of this method. However, the writing and reading skills may be taught, but they are dependent on the oral skills. So, on the other hand, the audiolingual suggests that students be taught phonology, morphology, and syntax of the language. So, all those patterns can be learned through contrastive analysis of between the native tongue and the target language. So, which help students to improve the acquisition of new languages.
Well, now, as you can see, these are the different techniques used in the audiolingual method for teaching a foreign language. So, first of all, we have the repetition, that is when the student retains what the teacher says, and then he repeats that utterance. For example, the baby is crying a lot. So in this case, this is the repetition. Also, we have the inflection, that is when, or it makes reference to a process of word formation. We have the replacement, we have where that is a technique where the students replaced a word by another. For example, he bought a beautiful jacket yesterday. So as you can see, the name "a beautiful jacket" is replaced by the pronoun "it." So another technique is the restatement, where the student rephrases an utterance and addresses it to someone else, but according to the instructions. For example, tell him to wait for you. The restatement would be wait for me. Or, for example, ask her how old she is. And the restatement is how old are you? We have also the completion and the contraction, the transformation, the integration, and the dialogues. The dialogues, well, for working on dialogues, the student needs to listen to, repeat, and memorize, but focusing on the proper pronunciation, intonation, stress, and rhythm usage. So it is important to keep in mind that dialogues usually illustrate sociocultural situations such as greetings, opinion exchanges, likes and dislikes. Well, the audio-lingual method, as any other method, has made some important contributions to the educational field. That's why it presents some advantages. The first one is that this method was the first one on focusing on the development of language syntax instead of vocabulary or morphology. The audiolingual method is focused on the speaking and listening skills that obviously are better trained and improved by the learners. And this method is just as functional and easy to execute for larger groups, and also it is emphasized on the correct pronunciation and structure. However, this method also presents some disadvantages. For example, the techniques of this method sometimes or always tends to be tedious, boring, and even meaningless, because there is no creativity, because the students always memorize and repeat the information, but without understanding the whole information. In this method, it is centered on the teacher. It means that the teacher has an active role, meanwhile students have little control over their learning. And equal importance is not given to all four skills. So that's why the reading and the writing skills are neglected by this method. And finally, the behaviorist approach to learning is now discredited because some scholars have proved its weakness.
Finally, as a conclusion, the extensive memorization, repetition, and overall learning of those key concepts or patterns were the key to the method's success, as the students could see the immediate results. But it was also its weakness, because it was discovered that language is not acquired through a system or a process of habit formation. So likewise, it's necessary that the method used or applied within the classroom takes into account the context of the different situations. So we can see that, or we can say that this method is not a recommended method when learning or teaching a foreign language. So finally, the references, and thank you so much.